This is a great shot here. So see with these kind of repeating columns here, kind of pulls your focus in down towards the end of this road here, like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use, I might actually, you know, it could suit, I've got the 18 to 55, punched it up to about 40mm-ish there. Works in both sort of landscaping. Once that van's moved, do it in portrait as well. Yeah. That was just kind of like a little wee kind of brief introduction to today's video. But today's video is actually not about taking photos. It's actually to discuss something that I believe is quite important to talk about in photography. And that's the concept of hero shots, a concept that applies to all genres of photography, not just street photography, which we'll get into in a minute. So what I want to talk about today is the concept of what exactly are hero shots, why they're important, why they're great, but also why they're a problem. So let's get into it, shall we? Now, to give you the overall concept of what is a hero shot usually consists of a singular image that is composed and set up in a specific way that deliberately and purposely draws in the attention of the viewer. Now, this is predominantly used in things like marketing or social media or other kind of campaigns like that, or some kind of like other kind of like advertising as such. Things that is predominantly used where you're trying to grasp in the attention of a viewer and grab people's attention. Now, as I said, this applies to all forms of photography, but we're going to talk about it in street photography in this case. And how it works in street photography is usually when you set up like a hero shot, typically it means you're kind of like setting up and giving the viewer a taste of like where you're at, the location you're in. So this could be photos like such as like the Eiffel Tower, Paris, the Colosseum in Rome, or the Shard in London, or any of these kind of like, you know, normal kind of like landmarks, these huge kind of world landmarks that are recognisable and distinctible, even for people who have never been to that actual location. Now, of course, hero shots can go beyond just like actual physical landmarks. They can be actual like just striking images that are really kind of captivating for a viewer. So for in terms of like in street photography, it could be like a kind of like shot of like maybe a good kind of classic sunset where you got the kind of low shadows of like people walking through the shot. Other times people use where it's like a close-up shot of like maybe a kind of a pedestrian or someone walking into like the photo where it's like kind of like a close-up of them. Or it could just be one where it's like you just have a photo that's got great kind of like tones and definitions in it, really kind of dark, kind of like moody kindness to it, very kind of like classic kind of almost you'd see around like on social media quite a lot, where it's like, you know, kind of dark and gritty sort of feel. Another characteristic of hero shots is that it sets the kind of the tone of the collection of photos. So if you were setting out a group of images on social media, it's like you have your hero shot, which is the one that pulls in the viewer's attention, but the kind of tones and definitions and kind of narrative of that photo gives the kind of overall story of what you're telling. So for example, like today is maybe a kind of more autumnal day, so I would start a photo with a very kind of like autumnal kind of like look of like orange and yellow trees, and that would set up the tone for the series of photos that I would show after it, and kind of like maybe smaller details and stuff like that. So the hero shot is kind of the initial kind of thing that you're looking to use to grab people's attention. Now, the beauty of hero shots to use as a photographer is that it really helps you showcase your portfolio. It really showcases your kind of like style as well. Really kind of lets people see that what it is you're trying to create. So in my case, for example, when I'm looking to do street photography and I like to have a subject in my photo, I like to kind of like isolate my subjects and like put them in a big kind of massive environment and kind of showcase like the contrast between like a singular individual person and the massive man-made environment around them, which would be my kind of like, in my case, my kind of hero shots. Now, of course, that's just my kind of style of photography, but there are many other kind of hero shots for street photography. Drone photography is a massive big one, which is not maybe to my taste, but it's to very many other people's taste, and it's definitely a good classic when you want to talk about capturing people's attention and drawing in the viewer and getting people to stop and give them that kind of wow factor. Other examples could include things like maybe just kind of other kind of like telephoto lens street photography, where you're kind of like showcasing a massive man-made environment, but the kind of massive compression effect with a kind of like long zoom lens is kind of showing the big kind of like street of it and the kind of environment and the man-made kind of superstructures of it. These are just many kind of examples of what concepts is a hero shot in street photography. Now, of course, it would be highly double standards of myself to make this video to tell you as to why hero shots are bad for street photography and why you shouldn't do them, especially after I've just given you the many kind of benefits of it, and especially because I myself have taken hero shots and it's been a large part of my street photography journey. But that being said, they do pose a bit of a problem. Let me explain why. You see, while there isn't necessarily anything inherently wrong with hero shots, in my opinion, they don't represent the full craft of street photography. The craft of street photography isn't just about giving away massive kind of big photos, it's about telling the full story of your location, and in my opinion, a hero shot can't do that all on its own. And when I say the craft of street photography, I mean by not just having hero shots that show where you are. I mean like giving every way detail of where you're at. So it's going a bit into the finer details of what makes up your location and capturing the life of that area and showcasing it through like almost like a kind of like, we're to the point where the viewer can feel the pulse of the area and can feel the beat of it, and to even put it in a more fancier ways, but capturing the essence of human existence. Now, if I was to give you kind of examples of these photos that go beyond hero shots, these are photos that are not necessarily capturing a massive environment. They're the key of finding the finer details. So these can be things like images of like the expressions captured on people's faces. It could be the architecture of the buildings in the area. It could be finer details of like maybe kind of like on cars or other kind of buildings. Things that allow kind of the images that make kind of give viewers the idea of little tastes of the environment. You know, things that are not necessarily kind of like massive or anything grand or spectacular. If I was to give you an example of this in my own right, where I used it for my case, earlier this year I was in Marrakesh, Morocco, and Marrakesh is famous for having souks and markets. So what I did is I took photos, where I was allowed of course, took photos of like the herbs and spices, the textures and patterns of like the kind of carpets they were selling, or maybe kind of woodwork and craft, things that kind of made up the area and gave a sense of like kind of environment and kind of culture of it. Something that captures the essence of the environment you're in and kind of goes beyond just kind of anything grand. Obviously I did use certain like hero shot kind of techniques and captured those big moments I was looking for, but it was important to kind of balance it out with the kind of finer details and to collect kind of like a lot of kind of like snapshots almost, like for the finer details that make up the area. Now, I don't make this video to kind of like ward people off hero shots and say that hero shots alone are bad for you. Of course not. As I said earlier, a large part of my photography portfolio has been hero shots. But this is something that I've learned recently within photography, is that it's not just about capturing massive moments that are exceptionally eye-catching or very kind of wow factor and really kind of grasping. Street photography is so much more than that. Street photography is about the finer details that are not necessarily immediately available to the naked eye, but when you drill into it, captures so much essence of an area and really showcase the real kind of true heart and pulse of a location. That massive hero shots, as amazing and as eye-catching as they can be, they can't do that alone. And to be fair, I don't really blame anybody who likes to use hero shots as massive part of their portfolio, because in today's kind of like consumeristic, commercialized world, especially like social media nowadays is basically a form of advertising. You have to kind of grab people's attention, especially at a time of algorithm, where the algorithm is determined and the success of your photo is based upon how long people view it and how many people engage with it. So I don't blame people for wanting to use hero shots, or even so going beyond that, anyone who feels compelled to use just hero shots to try and grasp people's attention just so they can get some form of their work attention. So I don't blame anybody for this, but I do believe, as with many things, it's all in good moderation between hero shots and other kind of photos. So that is it. That is the video. That's just what I wanted to come on here and talk about today. It's a concept that I believe is quite important to street photography, but maybe not talked about enough. And it's a concept of, I believe that hero shots, brilliant in their own right, but not the full story of street photography. So please, if you could, try and take some form away from this but capturing the finer details. But more important than that, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.